The seasonally adjusted Absa Purchasing Managers Index dropped significantly to 43.5 points in July from 57.4 points in June. The manufacturing sector suffered a single-month decline of nearly 14 points. This is the lowest recorded level since May 2020, worse than during the hard lockdown of April 2020. July saw South Africa being placed on adjusted level 4 lockdown restrictions for a large part of the month as the country battled a severe third wave of COVID-19 infections. There was also the violent unrest in parts of KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng. The riots disrupted supply chains, industrial output and the demand for manufactured goods. In addition, the manufacturing sector may also have been negatively impacted by the recent cyber attack on Transnet, which saw operations at South Africa's major ports temporarily halted. Well, to expand on the latest findings of the PMI, I'm joined by Miyelani Maluleke. He's an economist at Absa. Thanks very much for joining us, Miyelani. Now, the index fell just shy of 14 index points. I suppose this had a lot to do with the unrest, and of course, we know that caused major disruption in the economy.
That's absolutely right. I think at the start of the month, we already suspected that activity was going to be quite a bit softer. We, of course, started with an escalation in lockdown restrictions in response to the third wave. We knew that this was going to have an effect on those businesses, specifically who are in the alcoholic beverages manufacturing space. But when we had the additional shocks over the course of the month in the form of the rioting and looting, and of course the disruptions that we also saw at Transnet, it was really a question of how bad the damage was going to be rather than whether or not it was going to be there. And I think what we're seeing in the data from July is that the damage was sufficient to actually reverse some of the gains that we have seen in the recovery in the manufacturing sector from the depths of the hard lockdowns last year.
We do know that when there's supply chain disruptions, it creates lags in the system. So how badly were the manufacturers who both import and export, how badly affected are they?
No, and we do actually, measure that particular issue in the Absa PMI data. There is a sub-index there we call Suppliers Deliveries Index, where we ask manufacturers specifically to give us a sense of how easy or how difficult it was to source all of the inputs that they need to operate. And interestingly enough, we actually saw quite a bit of a deterioration in that particular sub-index. So it's measured in an inverse way. When you see an increase, it shows you that it's getting a little bit harder to source those inputs and supplies. And in July specifically, we did see that particular index rising to the highest level since the hard lockdown restrictions last year. And I think it just gives you a sense of how bad the impact was. And I think that it's not just an issue of sort of the disruptions that we've seen at Transnet specifically, but the fact that for a brief period of time, we were not, some of the major roads around the country had to be closed, particularly from KZN because of the riots, I think also would have affected major parts of the manufacturing sector around the country. And then, of course, it's also important to point out here that KZN and Gauteng in particular do account for about 60% of all manufacturing activity here in the country. And the fact that those two provinces were kind of the center of all of these disruptions, I think certainly has had a big impact on the numbers that we're seeing today.
Something positive that came out of the index report is that industry players are optimistic about the future, which suggests that they may view what happened in July as a blip. Would you agree?
Yeah, and we share that as well. And I think as you point out, Nombu, a big part of the weakness that we're seeing in July because of rioting and looting, that has been brought under control. It was partly because of the lockdown restrictions. Those have been partly lifted. So we're confident that we should see a bit of a rebound in August. And you certainly also see it in manufacturers' expectations as well. And I think the timing of the survey also plays a bit of a role there, Nombu. We did the survey mostly over the course of last week, when some of these challenges that we've experienced over the course of July, of course, had subsided quite a bit. And I think we're seeing manufacturers saying August should look a bit better than what we've seen in July.
And your thoughts very quickly on government's response or National Treasury's response to the devastation that arose as a result of the unrest. Do you think it was enough, the package that they made available? And also, are you confident that at the end of the day, those who need the money are going to get it?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not a support package as sizable as what we had over the course of last year. I think the total size of it this time around is about 39 billion rand, like close to 27 billion rand of that is going to grants. I think it's difficult really to kind of argue against what the National Treasury is trying to do here. We do have an unemployment rate that is currently sitting at close to 33%. There's a lot of people out there trying to find work, and there's still a lot of industries that used to hire a lot of people that are still not fully operational, like the tourism industry more broadly. So I think the support that we're seeing is probably good use of the little bit of fiscal space that has become available due to higher tax revenue collections. But how much of a difference really does it make to economic growth? I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference, which is why we still believe that the rebound in GDP that we're likely to see this year will be around 4%, which is certainly not sufficient to take us back to pre-pandemic levels of GDP this year.
Miyelani, thank you very much for your time. As always, Miyelani Maluleke, he's an economist at Absa.